everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be reviewing the Pat McGrath Mothership Mega Celestial Divinity palette. Yes, quite a mouthful, but fitting given how large this palette is. So it has 18 shades, which is more than any prior Pat McGrath palette. And I'll actually, as a result, be splitting up my review into 3 separate segments so we can make sure that we can cover all the swatches and also get all of the shadows on my lids, and I can give you guys really more in-depth impressions. The reason I'm splitting up into 3 is we actually have 3 separate 6-pan palettes within this Mothership Mega palette. So these 2 columns over here correspond to the original Dark Galaxy Star Wars palette, which was limited edition and sold out very quickly. And same thing with these 2, which were from the Galactic Gold Star Wars palette. Same story, sold out very quickly, very limited. And then these 2 columns in the center are unique to this palette and have not been released prior. So this really is a very extensive palette and great for if you did not get the original Star Wars palettes. And also just, more generally, it's great if you love color, if you enjoy the Pat McGrath formula. This is a cardboard package, so it's definitely not as luxe as her standard black lacquered packaging, but you also see a significant difference in price. So this palette here is 18 shades for $78, whereas your standard 10-pan palette from Pat McGrath is $125. So it's not quite the same luxury experience, but as far as I can tell, the formula is very consistent with Pat McGrath shadows, and you just have so much variety in this palette that even if, some of these shades are outside of your comfort zone or just not really your jam, you still have so many different options in terms of how you can take this. So I would overall highly recommend this palette if you just want some more color in your makeup collection, or you love the Pat McGrath formula, or if you just, you want to play, basically. Of all of the palettes that I have in my collection right now, this is probably the one that really inspires me the most to get out of my comfort zone, even though, as you can probably see, from today's look, this palette generally yields looks that are very different from what I'd normally do, and also definitely not everyday looks. I still enjoy all the looks I've created. They're just kind of different, and the shadows themselves are just so beautiful. So even if you put kind of a funky combination on your lids, there's just, there's something nice there. There's a certain creativity that you don't necessarily get from some of her palettes that maybe have a more consistent color story. For today's video, like I said, we're gonna focus on the Dark Galaxy 6-pan, and so that's what I have all over my lids. So we're gonna go and do swatches and a tutorial of those, and then I'll give you guys my final impressions. So without further ado, let's go into the swatches. So I'm going to start left to right, top to bottom. First off, we have Saturnalia, which is a beautiful metallic red. Very shimmery, and this is a shade that you can really blend out as a transition shade as well. So even though there's only one matte in this 6-pan set, you can use this in lieu of that. And then we have Bronze Nebula. This is a metallic bronze shade, but a little bit more textured than Saturnalia. Next up, we have our Venomous Void shade. So this is one of 3 mattes in this palette, and kind of a go-to for kind of mid-tone to deeper shade that is going to just cool down your look and bring some more of a plummy hue. Next up, we have Odyssey. And this is a very flaky, shimmery shade. It has a bit of a dual chrome to it, so it has kind of a pink flip in a kind of lavender taupey base. And then next up we have Cosmic, which is also a very glittery dual chrome shade. This has a bit more of a coppery base to it, but it has a beautiful pink flip. And then lastly we have Smoked Amethyst, which is a really, really unique shade. So it has a really deep smoky base with a hint of purple and blue in it, and then really gorgeous pink glitters throughout. So without further ado, let's get started with the look. So I'm gonna first take my Sonia G Classic Crease brush and dip it into Saturnalia, which is that metallic red shade. Just put that all over the crease area. It's a little bit patchy at the moment, but that's to be expected with a metallic. So we're just gonna keep building that a little bit until it becomes a little bit more opaque. Okay, so I know this red sparkly eye looks a little bit crazy right now, but we're going to add a lot more layers and it's gonna all start coming together. Using that same brush, I'm gonna now go into Venomous Void just to cool down this look a little bit and also add a little bit more dimension. So you can see that already makes it look a little less crazy. So now I just want to deepen things up a little bit, so I'm going to go in with my Wayne Goss number 4 brush, which is a smaller brush, and I'm going to dip into Smoked Amethyst. So quite a deep shade. You don't need a ton of this, as you can see, to just add some additional dimension to the lids. This is a really, really gorgeous shade that is simultaneously very smoky but also very sparkly. There's a lot of pink shimmer in this. I'm gonna go in with that same Wayne Goss brush but back into Venomous Void to try to just blend out the edges a little bit more. So now I'm going to apply some shimmer all over my lid. I'm going to start out with Odyssey, and it's a bit of a chunky formula, so I'm actually going to use my finger to do this part of the application. So this is Odyssey, very, very sparkly, and as you can probably tell, quite foiled as well. So I'm just going to use that same finger and dip into Cosmic to just add a little bit of that on top of the Odyssey shade. So Cosmic is really beautiful and also very foiled. I'm just dabbing this on the center of the lid. And again, I'm just going to go in with my Wayne Goss number 4 just to make sure the edges of that are well blended, since these are very glittery shades. Okay, so now for the inner corner, I'm gonna take my Refer number 3 brush and go into Bronze Nebula just to add some additional shine to this look. So I'm just gonna first put that in the inner corner area and then layer it on top of Odyssey a little bit so it just has that pretty effect. Now I think we're ready for the lower lash line. So I'm gonna take my trusty Esom G27 brush and put this into Venomous Void and then just sweep this in the outer part of my lid. Next, I'm going to dip into Saturnalia and just add a little bit of that red as well. So I do want to just add a little bit of shimmer on the lower lash line as well. So I'm going to take my Refer number 3 brush and dip into Cosmic and see if I can get that to stick to the lower lash line. Just packing that on. It is a very, very flaky shade, to say the least. Okay, a little bit sheer in application, but I think it overall achieves the shine that I was looking for on the lower lash line. Finally, as just a finishing touch, I'm gonna take the Refer number 3 again and go into Bronze Nebula and just connect things a little bit on the bottom. There we go. So that was a pretty intense look, but I'm gonna go in now with some eyeliner, which will hopefully just make things look a little bit more normal. Alrighty, so the eyes are now done. What do you guys think? It's very far from your everyday look, but I think it's a really fun set of sparkly shades that manages to all still kind of work together, even though there was only one matte in the palette, and you don't really have, you know, your classic inner corner highlight or any safe shades, let's just put it that way. It's definitely quite a look, but I think it's a really fun look and definitely gives you some of those Star Wars intergalactic vibes. So let's go ahead and finish off the rest of the face. So I have here my Gucci bronzer, which is my go-to bronzer when I have slightly cooler toned looks. And I'm gonna take my Rephr number 5 brush and just gently go into that and sweep it all over the hollows of my cheeks. Next for blush, I'm going to use the Mood Flush shade in my Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit palette, Sculpture Edition. This is from this year's holiday collection, and I'm using a Rephr number 4. And I like using this brush because it really just fits in nicely in the pan. And I do find with the Hourglass shades on my skin tone, you kind of need to build up the pigmentation a little bit to really see the shades. So this kind of goat hair brush really does a good job of just picking up a decent amount of pigment. And then I'm just going to actually take that same brush and lightly go into this highlight shade, which is the Champagne Strobe Light, and just kind of put that on the high points of my cheeks. I also want to use this highlight on my brow bone, so I'm going to get my Sonia G Mini Booster and just shimmy it in there and put that all over the brow bone area. So for the lipstick today, I have two options from Pat McGrath. I have her Luxe Transformula in 35mm and in Unnatural Natural. So these are both quite similar, but 35mm is definitely more pink based. I think since we have a lot already going on the eye, I'm actually gonna play it safe, I guess, and go in with Unnatural Natural, which is this really beautiful mahogany brown neutral. So now for my overall thoughts on the Dark Galaxy 6 pan inside of the 18 pan Celestial Divinity palette. Overall, I would say, to be completely honest, this 6 pan is probably my least favorite of the three. But that being said, I love all three, so I still do love this 6 pan. So the reason it is my least favorite of the three is that I do have a tiny bit of trouble with these two shades over here. So Odyssey and Cosmic are just very flaky, and so it kind of took me a while to learn how to use them. Now that I sort of pack them onto my lid with a finger, I think they're fine. They still do have a decent amount of fallout though, and Smoked Amethyst also does have a decent amount of fallout. Also, I would say this Bronze Nebula and the bronze shade over here in Galactic Gold are quite similar on the lids, but have different textures. So this shade over here is much more of a standard metallic formula, and thus much more smooth on the lids and easier to apply with a brush. This shade definitely has a bit more shine to it, but at the expense of being harder to apply. So that's also something that kind of nudges me more in favor of Galactic Gold. Saturnalia though is a really beautiful shade. My only slight complaint there, which is not even really a complaint, is that I just, don't reach for this bright red color as much as I do a lot of these other tones. That kind of leads Venomous Void, which I do really love. I am so glad that that's in this palette because I think of this mahogany shade as a way to kind of add a little bit more warmth, or at least a more neutral shade, and this one really kind of cools things down. So depending on the direction of the look, it's great that you have these two mattes in here. But overall, I still love this set, and I just would say that for the shadows in the Dark Galaxy, they're really shades I prefer to pair with other shades within this palette or with another Pat McGrath palette instead of just using all by themselves as I did in today's look. But I still do like the look from today, so I think you can create a beautiful look even if you're exclusively using that set of 6. So that is the look of the day. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you'll stick around to see my other 2 videos on this Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity palette. I am completely in love with this palette, and most days I would kind of dip around between the different sets of 6 and also bring in some of my other Pat McGrath palettes just to supplement the shades. But I think you can just create so many beautiful looks with this palette, so I would highly, highly recommend this for anyone who loves the Pat McGrath formula or maybe hasn't tried Pat McGrath before but wants something that's at a relatively approachable price point given the number of shades that you're getting. And really, I think the looks that you create with this palette are uniquely artistic and just very Pat McGrath. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!